Hi, I'm Scott Giroux, and this is a new channel kind of thing that I started called Power Apps Cafe. And I just wanted to have something a little bit more informal where I can just chat about Power Apps and do some of the things I've been wanting to do, like investigate various different options that you might have, look at new stuff, look at latest releases in the news, maybe do some interviews as well. And next week, I'm going to be at the summit in Texas. It's going to be a mixed bag, but I'm really looking forward to giving you the latest and greatest from the Power Apps news. So cue the intro. This has been one of those things I've wanted to do for a while, and actually I didn't have an outlet to do it, so hence why I've started to do Power Apps Cafe. And the Dataverse for Teams integration with Power Apps has been around for quite some time now, and it's been getting gradually better and better, especially around the area of ALM. One of the things that I found really quite interesting when it was first released was the sample apps. Now, the sample apps have been gradually growing and growing and growing over time. So if we could look at Power Apps here, and if I go to the Home tab, you can see there's a whole load of them here. So employee ideas, inspection, and these are just being kind of churned out. And one of the things that I've always been a real proponent of in coding, the pro coding world, which is no different to the low code world, is actually looking at how other people solve problems as a guide to how you could solve those same challenges. So looking at other people's code, as it were, is a great way of learning and also exploring additional ideas that maybe you hadn't thought about solving a particular problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at one of these apps, and we can just kind of step through it and see how it works and unpick it a little bit and see the kind of various different techniques. And the one I've chosen this time, and I may do other apps, and certainly let me know in the comments and subscribe to my channel to get notified of when we do more videos. But let me know if there's any other apps that you'd like me to look at. But I'm going to look at the Milestones app because this one's quite interesting. You can just see here from the sample image, it's got a lot of visually appealing aspects in there, and the thing that really drew my attention to it initially was the kind of the grid with these tags inside. It's kind of a common thing that you need to solve when you're writing business apps. So what I've done is I've actually gone over to the GitHub repository. So but you can actually see how to install it. So a lot of these apps you can actually install by using just the add to team, but also if you can look at the right-hand side here, you've got the releases. And so what this does is this gives you a managed solution that you can install just in the same way as you would do in a full-blown Dataverse environment. And that's what I kind of mean about this getting a lot better from an ALM perspective. So if I go over to the Build tab, if you see these little three dots, you may not have noticed them, and they've only really popped up in the last few months. You can actually open up in Power Apps, and this opens up, if you're used to doing Power Apps development inside Dataverse, then this will just become very, very familiar. It's slightly cut down. You don't have all of the options as you'd expect. This is a full environment which has got, actually this one's got Dynamics 365 in it. But the key thing is it's got the ability to import a solution. So exactly the same dialogue as you'd expect. And so I've imported the milestone solution. And if we open up this solution, you can see that it's got a load of tables, but it's also got this, the Canvas app, the Milestones Canvas app. Now, if you go over into Dataverse again, Dataverse for Teams, and if you look at the installed apps, you can see here that what it's actually doing is it's showing you the solutions the managed solutions you've got imported. And so I've got two. I've got boards and I've got milestones. So if you go back over to the solutions area here, you can see milestones and boards. So and those are managed solutions. Here's just what an unmanaged solution would look like, and they're not showing up here. And so if I click on See All on the milestones, what it does is it brings us into the same kind of view as I would get inside the Dataverse solution view. It's what you can see here is it's showing the same kind of thing, the apps and the tables. What you can do here is we can actually start to investigate. Now, the way that this works is it's like you've got projects and then you've got tasks in those projects. Really, there's nothing that particularly interesting here. If I open up one of these tables, you can see that they've got a primary image column. If you look at edit data, and this is one of the things that I really like about the Dataverse for Teams. It's very easy to get in and start editing your data just in the same way as it might be sort of Excel. It's sort of like a sort of editable grid here, and you've got the photo, and I can add new rows or columns. But if we look at the Milestones app, what we can do here is we can actually edit this milestone. So although it's a managed solution, we do actually have the ability to edit the app, and so that's going to kind of create an unmanaged version on top of our managed version. Now, so if we look at the way that these screens are constructed, we've got the loading screen, and then we've got lots and lots and lots of screens here. What's interesting, the first thing that strikes me here is that we've got project screen, and then we've got mobile project screen. So what we can immediately see is, and I think this is kind of dating this app actually, because more recently, there has been much better support for responsive apps. Now, if you go into App Plus, you can see here down in layout, we've got these options for horizontal and vertical container and container. I don't think this app is actually using those, because if we look at these containers here, these aren't responsive containers. We've just got normal containers and groups. So the mobile project screen, if I select this gallery here, if I go over to the width, you can see here that we've got parent.width, parent height minus the Y position. So the responsivity of this app, you can see immediately, is much more sort of hard coded. It's sort of an old school way of doing it, perhaps. What's interesting, I wonder how this is actually going to move us on to the correct screen. If I go to this, the loading screen, presumably that's the first place that it's going to hit. Now, we've also got an app on start. That's the thing that usually gets run before every app initializes. And so you can see it's loading a whole load of stuff here. So it's loading, it's saying the app is not loaded yet. And then it's loading all of these languages. And then it's loading some resources like the localizations, basically where it matches the user's language. So it's just kind of doing a switch here on the language and determining. And so there must be, if we go over into these data sources, there must be something. So static localizations. So there's like going to be something in here. There you go. Static localization imported from Excel. So what they're using is they're using an Excel spreadsheet to store all the localized labels, which is, it's quite a common scenario. Rather than storing them all in Dataverse, you just load them from a static static resources that's actually embedded inside the app. It doesn't mean that you need to actually create any sample data. So I think that's probably my preferred way to do like localization, because when you import the app with the latest version, you're also going to be importing all the localizations rather than rely on data stored in Dataverse. Then the app version and the Dataverse localizations could get out of sync. So that kind of makes a lot of sense for me. There's also a load of other static resources here. So I'm guessing at some point, static localization bug fixes. I don't know what that is. Maybe we'll have a look at that in a minute. But what we're trying to look at is how does it determine which of these screens to go to? Is it going to go into the mobile screen or the main tablet screen? Now, one of the challenges with these apps is how do I actually search stuff? Because there's no global search. And that's where there's a really great tool called Pack Canvas, which allows me to unpack a Canvas app into just a set of text folders. So that's what we're going to do. You will need to install the Power Apps Power Platform CLI, which there's a VS Code extension for it. So here's the solution that I downloaded from GitHub. And if you open that, it's a standard Dataverse solution. But if you open up the Canvas app, you can see that there it's got the Milestones MS app. There's obviously other ways of getting hold of that MS app. But what I've done is I've just extracted it from the zip. And I'm going to open that up with VS Code. This is going to allow us to unpack this. So if I create a new terminal here, and if I say pack, because I've got the VS Code extension for the Power Platform CLI, and if I type pack canvas here, it gives us some options. So unpack is the key thing here. There is unpack. Now what we've got is this milestones folder here, which is now you can see under the source folder, there's all of these screens. So if I look at the the app YAML, you can see here we've got the app on start. So it's just going to make it a whole ton easier for me to see what's going on with this code rather than sort of navigating around all the different controls and all the different events. And also that means I can actually do a full kind of search and replace. What also goes, you get the data sources. So if I look down here, I can see, for example, those static localizations.json. So, this is effectively an imported Excel spreadsheet into a big JSON file. And you can see all of the different resource strings. So you scroll down, you've got English at the top, then I've got a thing that looks like German. So that's all good. So if I go to the localization bug fixes, this is an interesting, let's see what this is, what even is this? So here's like a JSON unescaping. So if I unescape this, and if I take this and I can go and add new file, I just saved it as a JSON file. So yeah, interesting. Obviously being used somewhere. Let's have a look at what's actually going on with this file. So it's called static localization bug fixes. If I search for static, you can see actually where it's being used. And there's a hidden screen here, which is exciting. So if we go back over to our Power App, and we should go into screens, and there should be something called hidden screen. So I search here, hidden admin screen. So there's the hidden admin screen and the hidden control screen. So which one's it used in? It's used the hidden admin screen, and so it's loading up a load of localization bug fixes. Maybe what happened is they loaded in the Excel first, and there were some things that needed to be changed, and now they're patching it, which is interesting. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. Anyway, that's a little bit of a diversion. But what we were actually trying to work out is how does it know to go to the mobile about screen versus the about screen or the add project screen. So I can do my search again here. So let's just type in mobile about screen and see where that is referenced. And so it's obviously in the mobile about screen, it's referenced lots of times. Whereas let's start at the loading screen, because the loading screen is obviously the key thing that it's going to go to, the first screen in the app, so it'll be loaded. So one of the things is that the timer, there is a timer here. And if we go over into the loading screen here, what we can see is that it's got a timer, which is like loading delay, and it's a 1 second delay. And so what it's obviously doing is it's ticking and saying, okay, has the app loaded or not? Because there's obviously some other things that are happening in the app start that it will set this app loaded. But what we can see here, this is the magic stuff, right? So what we've got the host client type. So if the parameters, and the parameters are the things that passed in the query string. So it's saying if the host type is Android or iOS, or if it's blank and the acceleration X is more than 0, or that there's obviously an admin screen toggle to test this out, then it's navigating over into the project's mobile project screen. But this is an interesting one, an interesting little hack here, because it's saying, okay, well, if we've got the acceleration X, that means that it's going to be a mobile device, because you only get the accelerometer information on a mobile device. And then obviously this is just for testing. So that's an interesting topic. So let's just do a quick search for that. This is part of the Microsoft Teams context, I'm guessing. So yeah, this is really good stuff. Okay, so let's just go back and have a look at some more information on let's go and explore this app a little bit more. So let's go back into our app here. The first thing I always look at the data sources and how it's connecting. So we've got just standard current environment Dataverse project connections and all the other tables that it uses. And one of the things that Canvas Apps isn't so good at is managing large amounts of data. So quite often you get into a situation where you have delegation. So that is where you're performing an operation on some data that can't be offloaded into the server. So it has to be done by loading a load of stuff into memory and then filtering, sorting it, whatever, in memory before it can actually be used, which means that you have a limit. Now, if we go into the settings, you can see that. So this currently is set to data row limit. That's the default 500. So what I always like to look at is in apps is how they manage large amounts of data. And Canvas apps tend to be better off dealing with small amounts of data. Model-driven apps are much, much better at dealing with huge amounts of data, because they're natively going to delegate everything to the server using grouping and aggregation and filtering and pagination and things like that. But if you go into our screens, at some point it must load the data in. So if I run this app, so I've got I created like a little test just earlier, a test project here. I uploaded a picture of a frog, although that's not a particularly good banner image. One of the things I do is I have like a frog list of the things that I don't really want to do, and I write them in a frog list, and I have to eat a frog every day. And anyway, that's enough about my strange frogs. But what we've got is various different items here. Now, at some point, it's loading these in from Dataverse. So when I select a project, it's going to have to go and grab all of those items. Now, a common pattern with Canvas apps is to load them into a collection rather than binding them directly to the data source. And the reason this is that if you bind it directly to the data source, then anything that you are doing has to be delegatable over into the server. Otherwise, it's always going to download a whole 500, whatever maximum you set in those settings, and then perform a load of tasks. So by loading a filtered set into a local collection and then performing actions allows you to sort of bypass that problem with the delegation. Probably on the start of the screen, if we go to the on visible action here, that's usually where this kind of stuff goes. So here we go. We're setting the project. We're searching the projects, and we are clear collecting. So yeah. So basically, what it's doing here is it is filtering the project work items by the project you have selected. And then it is loading them into this col work items based on that filter. And so this col work items is kind of now disconnected from the project work items. It's an in-memory collection. Okay. Now, if I run this and just go and add another project, so when I swap between these, at that point in time, it will be going and requesting and populating the work items into the different project. Now, but once it's in memory, what catches me up my eye here is if I select on these headers here, I can actually toggle a sort. And so when I'm doing this, it's really, really quick, and you don't get any little dots. So it's actually going to be doing this in memory. So if I go over into my milestone tasks, project work items, if I select that project work item there, I can't edit data from here. Great. There we go. So I've just opened it up inside the Teams project editor, table editor, and so I can edit the stuff here. So if I just, if I type, frog 3 there, and then it should just commit that straight into the database. And if I go back over into my Teams app, if I just sort by these, you can see that it's still got my local copy of that data there. It hasn't refreshed it on the server. Now, if I click on item 3, again, it still hasn't loaded it from the server. So in order to do that, I would need to switch over to another project. And if I switch back, you can see now it's decided to refresh the cache and load those items into its local cache. And so if I've now got frog 3. So these are the kind of the things that you have to think about in terms of when you're writing your apps and in concurrency. Do you have if you're going to do an update to a whole ton of rows, how are you going to manage concurrency if someone else has updated something in parallel to the version that you've updated, and managing those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, it's quite nice. I mean, an editable grid is kind of one of those things that really is very difficult to achieve. And I've actually got a PCF control that does that. I'll probably talk about that in a later episode. So make sure to subscribe and click that bell so you find out when I talk about it. But so we got like this selecting these checkboxes, and I'm guessing this is going to be some kind of repeating gallery. So if I come down here, so this is, so we've got gal work items, right? So and then we got a checkbox, and I'm guessing this checkbox here just goes ahead and on check. It's got a whole ton of stuff here. Okay, so this is interesting. Right, so what we've got here is screen reader. So it's actually setting some text in to then announce for what you're doing. And I mean, accessibility, this is an interesting. So here's a speech viewer. So if I run this back again, what should happen here is, let's just let it, if I select those all work items selected. So that's quite clever. So if you find that you need to have something, all work items deselected, you find that you actually have some requirement for screen reader, this would be a good way of kind of taking a lead from this example. One of the things, of course, is using tab. But it doesn't seem that actually tab is working here, because if I select this checkbox there, I should be able to use some cursor keys. So if I click tab, it's taking me right up to here. So it doesn't look like accessibility, and that's not uncommon, to be honest. It's very difficult to make grid type functionality fully accessible. However, most of other stuff in general in Power Apps is very accessible, but grids and things like selection of rows is notoriously difficult, and I tend to have to use PCF controls. So if I open up one of these, and I'm selected on a row here, if I tab along, you can see it's the right tab order is in place, and you should be able to use return to select items. There we go, up and down using the arrow keys. It does seem to function pretty well from an accessibility from the keyboard shortcuts. Just this grid selection is not accessible by the looks of it. Now, one of the things that I noticed earlier when I installed this, and I edited Milestone, is that if you can see here, these tags are dynamically the length of them is dynamic based on the contents. Now, if you've done any Canvas app program, you'll know that actually that's really quite difficult to do without reverting to kind of HTML controls or SVG controls or something like that. So let's take a look at what's going on here, because it's obviously, I mean, I put in a very long milestone name here just to see what it would do to truncate it. So if I go into this gallery and I just select one of these items, so let's just see if we can find what it is here. It's so it's the milestone label work items milestone. So you can see that the width of this is obviously dynamic. And what we've got is a very big formula here, and set the width to 0 if there's no milestone. Yeah, that's fair enough. And then it's saying min, and it's sum, and adding columns, and it's splitting the text up. So this basically splits that string up using nothing as a delimiter. So you basically get an entry in an array for every single character. And it's adding the column size. And what it's doing is it's looking up here based on the character in that split array, where the col char width matches on font weight, and the result. So if we go to col char width and go back into our VS Code, it'll be in a static Excel kind of style. Where is it? There we go. Static char widths JSON. So this is going to be a very large file. Here we go. So you can see each char font, and char weight, and the character code has got a width. So it's summing up all of the widths to be able to calculate that dynamic width. It's pretty clever. I mean, I wouldn't say that's going to be particularly performant for large record sets, but in this way it works pretty well, I'd say. So let's have a little bit more of an explore of this app. So if we go into the global settings, what we can do here is we can add in our priorities and sort of customize it. So one thing that does strike me as interesting here is when I select these, you've got these little icons here. And that's quite nice, where it's just sort of showing you the icon. Now, one of the challenges you may have found in Canvas apps, there's no sort of on a text box, there's no sort of focus event. So you can't on focus or on lost focus or blur run some code on a text box. But this is kind of looks like what it's doing here. So if we go into the actual designer here and look at what's going on here, and if we go over to the visible, there we go, visible, you can see here that it's using this item is selected. And this is actually quite one of those properties that doesn't get enough attention, I think, because if I do a little test earlier, so you can see here I've just added in a normal gallery, and as I select, I sort of click on each of these. It doesn't matter where I click inside this gallery repeating row, it sets this kind of this item property to be is selected. I don't have to code at all. It is simply, and all I've done is I've set the visibility of this image, just the standards with the sample data, just simply to be this item is selected. So you might find that useful. If I go over back to my app here, we've got this kind of rather nice sort of indicator here to say how many of the apps are nearing their milestone or completed. So let's have a look at how that is done. It's a repeating section here. So the milestones, and if we look at the data source, we've got here all the milestones that we've defined, because it's a table we've added our own milestones to. And in that, we've got this little image here, and the image contents is quite a big statement here. It's like a switch, and it's basically looking at the completion status of all of the items in that particular milestone. So it's doing account rows and it's filtering. So this is another one of those things where this is not delegated. This is working on a collection that's in memory. So there's no request to the server. It's just because it's looking at that data that we loaded when the project was selected, and it's finding out how many of them have been completed. And this is, yes, so this is in a big with block, all right? So what we've got here is we've got a load of information that we can use. And with blocks are fantastic for this, because, if you're going to use something lots of times in a subsequent calculation, it's a really good way of not only just meaning you've got less formula to write, because you can reuse the same formula, but also it does mean that you can do a lot more than you would normally be able to do. And you maybe have to use context variables or something like that. So we're storing this percent here, which is like doing a calculation using the previous calculation, and then it's basically outputting a set of images by the looks of it. So if I go over, depending on the progress, so it's going up in increments of 10, and then 5, and then 99 to 101. So if I go to the media, I'm guessing, there we go. There's a whole load of SVGs inside this app. Now, that's one option. Another option would be to actually have an SVG control and actually have the SVG, the actual calculation of the SVG text to use that number to kind of output a bar that is incrementally filling up. And actually, if you look, I think I saw it before. If we go back to our global settings screen, I've got a feeling that this icon, if we go here and look at the icon, the delete icon that we're just looking at, I've got a feeling I saw that image position image. Yeah, so here actually this is using an SVG image by actually including a icon with looks, what it's basically doing here is it's, by the looks of it, it's changing the color. So depending on the theme, then I'm guessing it changes the color of that icon. So that's an interesting kind of alternative you might find, especially if you've got some complicated graphics that you need to change with color and change with theme and maybe change depending on the status of something else, then you can kind of construct an SVG. I'm guessing that this var image record static icon view box, if we go into, or static icon path, if we go back into our VS Code and we search for static icon path, there we go. You can see here it's just like a set of vector coordinates effectively for strokes that designs the icon. So that's quite an interesting technique, don't you think? Now the last thing, and this is probably one of those things that is kind of starting to date this app. Now, if you remember before, I was talking about the fact that now you've got the layout containers that allow you to do kind of responsive stuff. We go over into general and upcoming features. I search for classic controls. There we go. So classic controls. These are the controls that originally were part of Canvas apps. But recently there's been an update to Dataverse for Teams, which means you get these kind of fluent UI. Now, I do recall seeing, if we search for fluent UI, I do remember that there was a note in the app on start. So you can see here, what it's doing here is it's saying we're using the Fluent UI palette. Fluent UI is like a library that Microsoft had developed, and they use it across all of their products to kind of give you a similar look and feel. And so you can see here, it's got this Fluent color palette. So all of these different, all these variables are being used to style the controls so that you could easily change the theme by just changing these color palettes here. And that's a really good technique. So if you don't already do that, I would highly recommend that approach. But what we're seeing here is if we go to the edit work item, if we look at this milestone drop down, okay, so what I've done here is I've just dropped in from the command palette here, input, I've just dropped on a combo box, okay. And you can see immediately that actually, if we just go to preview here of this and look at it, you can see immediately that this combo box down here looks very different to this combo box. I'm just going to move it a little bit higher so you can kind of, you see it there. So, if I do a drop down on this and I type start searching, you can see it's like autocomplete there. But here, it's a very different look and feel. It's a completely different control. So, this is a classic control effectively, and we're moving. I think the way that things are moving is to be much more of a fluent UI control. They've got some of them got very different properties to maybe the classic control. So you may need to look at how these things work, and some of them don't have the new fluent controls certainly don't have as much styling capabilities as the older ones. But of course, the advantage is that it means that you don't have to worry about having all those variables for your theme. They just automatically inherit the theme that Teams is running under. By setting that flag to include classic controls, you can bring them in. I do love this app, I have to say. It does really kind of, especially the fact that it looks native to Canvas apps, and it's got some kind of nice responsive parts to it, I think all of these sample apps that you get with Teams, they're not only are they really good for learning Canvas apps, but they're just great productivity tools. And I think and actually I've used this on projects. Just with a team, you just want something quickly to manage a set of tasks. It's fantastic, and it's an alternative to using, a classic Excel spreadsheet or something like that. So, yeah, hopefully you've kind of got some information, got some tips from that, I'd really encourage you to kind of do the same. If you're using Canvas apps, if you're writing stuff, just take a look at these Canvas apps or any Canvas apps that you happen to see, and just take a moment to try and work out how they've done certain things in the UI. It's a really good way of learning and getting alternatives. Maybe set aside a certain amount of time each week just to kind of go and browse other people's code. You won't be disappointed. You'll really get some good tips. So there we have it. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe to my channel. Click that bell to get notified. I'll be doing some more of these Power Apps Cafe sessions, and I may even be getting some guests on as well. So look forward to it. I'll see you then. Cheers.